when shit hits the fan, I know I'm going to rely on my grappling. I'd rather play the long game. It's like, I want to see how you feel after 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You know what I mean? I like to like take the will out of people.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpera.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Everyday Jiu Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Everyday Jiu Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. And today I have a special guest with me, Radley Snake Eyes de Silva. He is the Battlefield Fight League featherweight champion, three-time featherweight champion, and current undisputed reigning featherweight champion for BFL. Radley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Freaking happy to be here, brother.
Awesome. Guys, if you want to support the show, please check out the links in the bottom. That's about it. Appreciate all the support. All right, Radley. So, before we get started, let's just talk about your most recent win, an electrifying spinning wheel kick at BFL. What did they call it? World War III? Is that what they called that event?
I think it was World War II.
Man, that one already happened. I don't know why they call that one again. Yeah, like that was such a crazy knockout. I remember seeing it live and just being like, holy shit, that was impressive. I don't know if I'd ever seen you TKO or KO anybody, pardon me. I've seen you submit people before, but that was just on another level. Like the angle that you took a step and just caught him so clean. I actually heard he broke his jaw or he got really badly hurt from that. Man, it's super exciting. Obviously, you're on the radar of UFC after a win like that. How does it feel? How's your body holding up?
Yeah, man, to get a win like that, honestly, it feels amazing because I know everyone knows me as this guy who's like a flashy striker and all that. And like for my last three fights, as you said, like I've been basically just resorting to the grappling because I'm like one of those guys that I like to take the path of like least resistance, right? You know, a lot of times guys go in the cage and they just want to like show off and impress and they think about what everyone else wants for them and I gotta get a knockout finish or I gotta, put on a slobber knocker to get the crowd going. Obviously, I'm thinking about the crowd and thinking about being entertaining. That's why I'm doing flips and stuff going into the cage, right? I want to get the crowd hyped, but at the same time, I want to take the path of least resistance, and that's kind of what my last three fights before the last one was for me. I felt that grappling was kind of the easier path, so to be able to go into this fight and have a stylistic matchup that just suited my striking so well that it gave me a chance to really go and shine in the striking because I was coming in. I don't know if you know my opponent. He's like a lifelong wrestler. He's been wrestling since he was 5 years old, and wrestled all the way up into college and all that. And then started doing MMA, and not in his first six fights he fought dudes and finished them all in the first round. So is obviously he's good at what he knows. So I was going in there not taking any chances, right? Like, I know I have great grappling and I could obviously grapple with world-class wrestlers and jiu-jitsu guys, but at the same time, why not take the path of least resistance and keep it on the feet? He probably, from what I heard, like, I actually didn't watch much footage on him because I was just told he was a wrestler. And, when they tell me that, I already just give you the benefit of the doubt and just say, I just assume you're a three-time Division I NCAA champ or something like that, right? That's what I put in my head. So I knew he was a wrestler, but I actually watched an interview of his instead of watching his fight footage. And in the interview, he said that he took up MMA like 3 years ago. And that's all I needed to hear to know that I know where my advantage is going to be, right? There's nothing he can learn in 3 years that's going to give him the amount of experience and time to catch up to my lifelong amount of striking. So I took that. I didn't really need to look at any fight footage, and I knew what I was going to do in the fight, and that's what I did.
So what you just explained to me, talking about the last couple fights that you've had, where I was there at those fights. Obviously we both live in Vancouver. We've actually never trained together. We've been meaning to do that for sure.
Yeah.
But like I've seen you just dominate people on the floor and against the cage and just like really slick grappling. And it's a shame that we haven't actually rolled, because I'm like, man, every time I see this guy, he's got some awesome grappling. And then you go against a wrestler and you're like, actually, I'm going to switch my style completely this fight. I'm going to knock this guy out. So you're a fighter who has the ability. First of all, you have the strategic ability and the game planning to switch up styles for whatever is necessary. But also you have that, like, I believe you're 28, right?
Yeah. Just turned 29. Sorry, just
Okay, so
turned
you just
29 a couple months ago. Yeah.
okay, so you're just turned 29, and you have the wisdom to try and find the path of least resistance as a fighter. Like you said, a lot of these guys want to go in and they want to put on like a slobber knocker and get into these slugfests, which, don't get me wrong, as a MMA fan, it's always entertaining to see that. But at the same time, it's like, I'm always advocating for professional fighters to try and, whether they're grappling or MMA, to try to lengthen their health in the sport, whatever sport that is, and think longevity, think long term. And you can do that and still win in impressive fashion. So that's really cool to see that. Like I said, I've seen you absolutely dominate people in the grappling department. And so this time you just decided, like, I'm going to stay away from the ground game. Your goal is to keep it on the feet and knock him out.
Yeah, that was exactly my goal, and kind of to like what you were saying about, having the wisdom or whatever. It's because the guys that like I looked up to coming into MMA, like none of them were getting into slobber knocker fights. None of them were having to show their toughness every fight. Granted, there's always going to be a time where you meet your equal and you're going to have to, display some toughness. But, the guys that came up into MMA, like wanting to, like who inspired me were like, Anderson Silva, John Jones, George St. Pierre, Demetrius Johnson. Like those guys are going in there at the highest level and making it look easy. You know what I mean? They weren't in there just showing that they had a crazy chin the whole time. So if I had only looked up to guys like maybe like a Forrest Griffin or someone who's getting into those kind of fights, I don't know if I would see a career in MMA as a sport. I would just see it as more of like a spectacle. But because of guys like those people I mentioned, I saw a path where it's like I can actually do this and be at a level where it's I can have a career and be able to like have my mind after, not like just have CTE or just be
Yeah.
completely destroyed after. So, coming in, looking up to those guys kind of affected like the way I fight nowadays, because I'm always looking to make it like a clean performance. I don't want people to think like, oh, those guys are 50-50. It's like, I want people to know like I'm the better martial artist when we
Mm-hmm.
do mixed martial arts. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And if the guys that you named, like Forrest Griffin and, even guys like the Diaz brothers. And I don't know if you've seen Nam Pham lately, like these guys are so CTE. They can barely,
Yeah.
they're slurring their words. Like a guy like Nam Phan, I remember watching him on The Ultimate Fighter, like 10, 15 years ago. And now if you see that guy talk, like it's sad, man. He can barely even speak. And it's a hell of a cost to pay in this sport. But I think you're going about it the right way. And luckily you have the tools, you're well-rounded, you have the knowledge and the ability to make it happen. So that's super cool. I'd like to talk a little bit about your start in martial arts, because if I'm not mistaken, your background, like, you said you started from a very young age. I believe it was capoeira. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. Capoeira. Yeah, so basically, like my whole family came to Canada just because of capoeira. So my cousin's dad, Mestre Baham, he came to Canada to do like a performance with some of the kids and some people from our hometown, Recife. I think it was like Science World, or they were having some. And this is stuff that was like 30 something years ago, and like I kind of just remember hearing it. So they brought him over to do some performance with some of the street kids and whatnot, and then he ended up doing it, and then they ended up staying, and then so my cousin's dad actually brought capoeira first to Canada. I think it was like 35 years ago or something like that, to Vancouver. And then my dad, he was also doing capoeira in the same city, and he had a different path of getting to Canada. Actually, he met a woman who was from Canada who came down to do like a documentary about capoeira, and then they linked up and ended up falling in love and whatnot. And then so she brought him to Canada, but it was still through capoeira that he was able to come to Canada, because she was there doing a documentary about capoeira, right? And so he was like showing her around the city. They ended up linking up. They fell in love. Yeah, they went back to Canada. Eventually married. Eventually had a kid as well. And then in that time, me and my brother were still in Brazil while my dad was in Canada. So eventually, when he was able to like get a job and get his like bearings in Canada, he eventually brought me and my brother over to Canada as well. So the whole family was there now at that point, basically all because of capoeira, and we continued that note. My dad taught capoeira classes at community centers. My cousin's dad, Mashmahal, had his own academy there, and yeah, man, I was just basically just raised in it. As like the earliest memory I have is doing capoeira here in Canada. So started doing capoeira at teaching like formally. I'm sorry, training formally at like 5 years old was when I got like my first belt or whatever, and never stopped since. And then growing up, my cousin Marcus Vinicius, he was like the young up and coming guy who was like full of piss and vinegar and like really wanted to represent our school and capoeira, the martial art, in the ring, because there had been a few other guys who did it in Brazil. His name's like Mestre Hulk. He actually fought Mark Kerr like early on in the Vale Tudo days. So he was like a big star in the capoeira like community in Brazil, because he actually went in the ring and represented capoeira in Vale Tudo. So Vinny kind of wanted to do the same thing. There was guys like Pele and Anderson who had also done capoeira. So he kind of wanted to follow in that footsteps, and he wanted to do it specifically to represent our school, Ashe Capoeira, which his dad ran. And so he did that. And like, I was probably like 5 or 6 years old, seeing videos of him compete. And then eventually my dad also competed here locally in some of I forget what they used to call the I guess show or promotion, but it wasn't, none of it was really like legal back in the day. It was just kind of like, it was kind of like in the community center or in that BCIT, and they would have these MMA fights, whatever. And I remember watching that. I must have been like 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, and just seeing my dad just like fight someone and like get all bloody and stuff, and being that young, and it would just hype me up. And I remember thinking like I knew that eventually one day like I was going to be doing that as well, like representing in the ring. And as well as my cousin Marcus Aurelio, he also represented capoeira in the ring. He probably is the most famous now because of like all the viral knockouts and stuff he's done, fighting with and using capoeira. So like he had probably the least amount of formal training, as in like kickboxing, Muay Thai, and all that other stuff. But he was such a pure capoeira fighter, and when he would get the finishes or when he would fight, you could see like he was mainly only using capoeira, and it would really excite a lot of people to watch him fight. And then he went on to get like amazing, like super viral knockouts and a bunch of finishes, and now he's like known around the world and like world renowned as like one of the best capoeira practitioners in the world currently. So just having guys like that to look up to, like I had no doubt that it was only a matter of time before I like got in the ring and represented capoeira myself. And I never thought of mixed martial arts as like a career path in any way. I just thought it was something I was gonna do to like represent capoeira at the time. But yeah, so I started training with my cousin Vinicio, because he had spent time in like shoot box in Brazil and stuff like that training. So he had more like formal training in other arts like Jiu Jitsu and Muay Thai and stuff like that. So I started doing Jiu Jitsu with him when I was like, I want to say like 9. But he, even before that, he was always like grappling us, at home, like how, older like figures, like brother. He was like a brother to us, but he's our cousin. But he would always just grapple me and my brother, and force us to get up and do jujitsu with us, even before we knew what jujitsu was. So we were always grappling, and then eventually I started doing classes with him when I was like 10 years old, and he would run an MMA class as well. But mostly just starting as the young. I was the youngest in my family, right? So I'm the smallest, and just starting the way that I think the pure sense of jiu-jitsu is being the smaller guy and always being on your back and kind of figuring out how to be effective off your back, and eventually learning how to get up and get to someone's back as the small guy. And that's kind of how I started with MMA and jiu-jitsu, was just, getting held down by my older cousins, my dad, my brother, and eventually slowly getting better, and eventually like having some success with these big guys. If you even look on YouTube, actually, we used to have a YouTube account. There's like videos of us like grappling as like little kids, like just in the house, like my big dad, like 200 and something pounds, like just like putting me in a guillotine and stuff, and like me trying to get out as like a little kid. And like that's how it was for a long time, man. It was just like me grappling at home with my dad, my cousins, and doing class with them. And eventually, like I actually started getting good where I could even like would eventually get on my dad's back and like get a choke in and stuff like that. So that I started off mainly as like in a MMA sense, obviously with capoeira, but as far as like fighting for MMA, I started off more just being like a jiu-jitsu guy, like, you know what I mean, being the smaller dude, and I'd rather just grapple it out instead of fight someone way bigger than me. So that's kind of why my style is the way it is. And then eventually, when I got into high school, I'd say around when I was 14, at the end of grade 8, my dad started training for fights in BFL. So he I think he met someone when he was working security who was part owner of an amateur wrestling club here in Vancouver, and he asked my dad to come down, and my dad went once or twice, and then he asked me to come down, and basically I just never stopped going. Like I kind of took a hiatus from capoeira because at the time I had been doing it since I was 5 all the way up till I was like 14, just nonstop. Obviously, like doing school sports on the side, like I was super like into sports. Like anytime I could join any sport, it didn't matter what it was: badminton, volleyball, ping pong, rugby. Like it didn't matter. I just wanted to be competitive, and I really enjoyed it. So eventually, when I got into high school and I started doing that wrestling, I took a break from capoeira and basically only focused just on wrestling for like 2 years almost. And it was at like an amateur wrestling club, so it was very focused work. And yeah, in my like 2 seasons of competing in wrestling, like I honestly only lost like maybe like one or two matches, and they were to like guys who had been wrestling their entire life type thing. And like I had really good success. And then what happened was I was training at my wrestling club, and then this guy came in one day and asked like, "Hey, is there anyone in here that wants to do like some amateur MMA? We're going to be holding a show soon." And I was kind of just training there, and my dad just kind of just said, "My son will," and we're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll get him to fight." And then I was like, "Sure, whatever." And then so after I got noticed that I was gonna have my first amateur fight, I think I was 16. So I started wrestling at 14, and then did it up until I was 16. And then when I got noticed that I was gonna do an amateur MMA fight, I moved my training to Clinch, is the gym. You know Clinch?
Oh yeah, it's right down.
Yeah,
It's in Poco here. It's
yeah,
pretty close to my school actually.
yeah. So we moved over there. At the time, it was in Burnaby by like Metrotown.
Yeah, I've been
Um,
there before too.
yeah, way back in the day. It was like so long ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just moved my training there and started training for an MMA fight. Started doing Muay Thai. Started doing just MMA training, having a strength conditioning coach, all that. And at the time, like a lot of guys were going in there. You know, you had like Ash would go there for Ash Mashragi, Cajun Johnson, Ryan Ford, Tash Sasaki, my dad, like all these dudes from like just the local scene who were fighting. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
My cousin. So it was good at the time, and coming from a wrestling background, like I was having like really good success. Like as soon as I started trying MMA. So I had that first fight, and I won by TKO, and then I feel like that kind of hooked me to being like, I think I'm gonna do this forever type thing. Even though I didn't really see a career in it, I just thought like I just want to keep doing this because like being a
Hmm.
young kid and getting like a TKO finish for your first fight in front of a big crowd. The fight was like downtown at the Vogue Theater.
Oh, that would be
So it's like
sick.
you get the finish, then you walk outside downtown, and everyone's like cop flapping you. All these drunk people are like, "You're the best, man." So it's like you kind of get hooked on it, and then yeah, man, that was like my start into MMA. But definitely the road kept going. Yeah, is a long story, but like, yeah, eventually, what happened was the government actually got involved because you know how like my dad's from not from here, right? He like we child raising a child is different from where I'm from in Brazil, right? It's very
Yeah.
strict, you know what I mean? Like respect is a huge thing and it's very disciplined. So like, you know, my dad's just a Brazilian dad and you know, one day I guess he yelled too much or it was too loud for someone next door in our apartment that we lived in at the time and they called the cops. And
I
then the
thought
cops
there
came.
was like a domestic issue.
Yeah, exactly. And the cops came and all that and eventually, yeah, we got like separated from my dad like when we were like 16. I was
Oh wow.
16, my brother was 17, and the government system literally like took us out of our home and put us in like in
What?
assisted living. Yeah, like we didn't have foster. It was nothing. Like they literally took us out of our home and let us live by ourselves in like a government paid situation type thing. So think about that. Going from living a super disciplined life to having to, you know, follow the rules and all that, and then all of a sudden you have no rules and
And he
you're
wasn't doing anything really wrong. He was just sort of like had
I
an
mean,
old
yeah, we were
school
getting a
parenting style.
lashing, but like that's we got that's how we grew up, you know what I mean, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the only way to take care of two. He was a single father of two boys, like who were like crazy. We were young and crazy, so
Oh yeah.
it's just like at the time, I'm sure I was probably like, no, he was doing wrong. But looking back on it, like I'm so happy like he raised us the way we did. Like it, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I wouldn't be the guy I am if it wasn't for
Yeah.
my upbringing. So. But yeah, that was the situation we're in after like a whole life of complete like, you know, discipline and all that, and then having to all of a sudden take care of yourself at 16 years old. And, you know, at that point, I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to do anything good for myself. I just wanted to, you know, fuck off and do whatever, right?
Hmm.
So I basically did that for like a good year and a half. Didn't go to school. I just fucking did nothing good. Like
Didn't
hung out with
train.
bad people. I did. I stopped training. I actually had another fight scheduled, and Sal actually pulled me out of the fight because I wasn't showing up to the gym for like weeks and weeks. And then he's just like, "No, there's no way I'm letting you fight, man. You're not showing up to the gym and all that." And then after that, I just took some time from training as well. Like I said, like going from training your whole entire life to
Hmm.
now you're just fending for yourself, right? It's a little difficult to have
Yeah.
have the mindset to be like, no, I'm going to continue staying on this strict path when I'm 16 years old. I just want to I had a really strict childhood. Like, you know, wasn't really going to many like birthday parties or nothing. Like I remember the only time I was going to a friend's birthday party is if I had to do a capoeira performance at the birthday party and they were paying us or something. You know what I mean? Like I had super
Mm.
strict. It was only sports, school, and capoeira. Like that was it. So yeah, eventually, sorry. Yeah, so when I got the chance, I just said fuck everything, and like no one
Yeah.
was there to really tell me otherwise. And then maybe like a year and a half in of me just doing fuck all, nothing good for myself. My cousins luckily like stepped in and like you know they came to my house one day and they're like, "What the hell is going on here?" Blah blah blah. Eventually, they dragged me back to the gym. At the time, they were training with Caleb Starnes, yeah, the ex UFC fighter Caleb
Oh
Starnes.
yeah.
Yeah, they were training with him, and then they basically dragged me out of my bed and forced me to go start training again. And I started training with Caleb Starnes. So they pulled me out of my house when I was 16. From when I was 16 till I was like maybe 17 and a half, just about 18. I didn't really train. And then when I started training again with Caleb, I had trained for maybe like a few months, and then the government system, I guess we aged out of it. So at that point, we actually moved in with Caleb in like a fighter house situation. I was living with Micah Brakefield, Caleb Starnes, and
Oh yeah.
those guys. Like we're actually living in a house together for like a while, and it was like a fighter house. And so as soon as I moved in, though, like I didn't have a job or anything, so I had to take a fight right away. So at 18 years old, I had my first professional fight, kind of out of necessity, just to like make some money or whatever. I hadn't really been training like to the level I should be if I'm making my pro debut type thing. But I took a fight, and then it was in Edmonton against like some undefeated dude. He was 3-0, and he was like 30 years old, 31, and I'm like 18. And yeah, I went there, went to Edmonton, couldn't fly out because I didn't have ID, so I had to Greyhound out there, a 16-hour fucking bus ride. And then I got there the day of the weigh-ins, had to try to make weight as fast as I could. I lost like 14 pounds. I felt like I almost died that day, and then I didn't even make weight. I couldn't even make weight. It was such a bad situation. But yeah, I went there. I fought the guy. I freaking dominated him for two rounds, 3 rounds, and in the third round, when I got into my first bad position, I was so gassed, and I remember telling myself, I'm done. Like I was so tired that I couldn't do anything, and then that's how I lost my first pro fight by rear naked choke. Man, it was such a crazy situation, but and another thing, leading up into that fight, like I took it on 3 weeks' notice, and when I took the fight, I had told myself, like I remember clear as day telling myself this, like, man, I don't need to train for anyone. Like I'm too good. Like I don't need to train for anyone. Like I can literally just smoke weed and fucking hit the sauna, go for bike rides, and I'll beat anyone. And that's exactly what I did. And that's how it worked out for me. Like I even the day of the fight, I remember smoking weed, like I just didn't give a damn. And then I went in there, I had my way until I didn't have my way, and I learned the best lesson of my life that I'll never regret that loss because it taught me so much, and like it
Yeah.
taught me the most important lesson. And now I overtrain for fights. So yeah, it was a
Mhm.
great learning experience. Sorry, I'm just gonna have some tea here.
No worries. Do you still smoke weed?
Good question. Um, Not to the extent I did. Like if I have like a long break between fights, like every once in a while with my friend, like sure, like but like like I feel like weed makes you kind of like for MMA, you've kind of feel like you have to be like sharp and you have to
Yeah,
be like a knife, like a steak knife. And I feel like if you're smoking weed all the time, it kind of makes you like a butter knife, you know? You're just not quite as sharp as you need to be.
totally.
So like not on the daily use, but like super occasionally. Like we live in Vancouver, man. Everyone does, and
Yeah,
it's not bad occasionally. It's not that bad. It's just anything too much of anything is bad, right? So
that's
that's the
true.
way I like to think about weed now.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, your father is Andre de Silva, who I actually know him by a different name. I know him as Grandpa de Silva. That's what the guys at Titan used to call him. He's
Titan,
a
yeah.
That's what they used to call him. I remember the first time I rolled with your dad back at West Coast Jiu Jitsu. He was dropping in with Nabil, I think, and he heel hooked me, and I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck? What is this move?" Like we had never seen leg locks there, and he threw this heel hook on him, like fuck tap. I was just like, "Oh shit, that's Andre de Silva." And then
Wow.
you mentioned staying in a house with Micah Brakefield. Haven't they fought before, right? Like Micah's fought Andre de Silva, I
Yeah,
believe.
so that was after they fought that I lived in that house. But yeah, I remember watching that. And that was that's when my dad took up wrestling after that fight because he's like, got a
Micah's a
wrestler.
good wrestler, man.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler, and my dad had no wrestling whatsoever. So another thing, you know what I mean? Like I watched my dad, my cousins all have trouble with a wrestling style. So I knew at a young age that I need to learn this art if I want to have
Mhm.
success in the ring. So like watching them, like it gave me all the things I need to all the good things that they did about being using their capoeira, and then all the bad things that didn't work, like not having the wrestling base and all that. And I was able to fill those holes, and that's why I was so excited. And like it's just I was like I was elated to have a wrestler, like a college wrestler from America. Like like it's so unexplainable how good of a feeling I felt when I thought about the matchup, just being like, wow, I finally get to prove that it's to not to test that if I can actually go up against this challenge
Mhm.
and see if all this like lifetime of preparation if it's gonna work type thing.
Yeah. And like I said at the beginning of the show, like the previous matches to your last one, I've seen you dominate the wrestling. Like you're taking guys down, not just in ugly ways, but like beautiful takedowns, dominating them on the ground, and like taking essentially very very little damage, which is it's not easy to do, especially when you're the champion and you're fighting the best guys in the division. I want to go back to capoeira in a second because I'm pretty ignorant. Like I know there's a lot of jujitsu guys who come from capoeira backgrounds. Probably the most notably would be like Cobrinha, who I'm not sure if you follow jujitsu, but he's kind of like a jujitsu legend from like, 10, 20 years ago. Guys like seriously considered one of the greatest of all time, ADCC champion and IBJJF champion. Like, can you explain the sport of capoeira? Like, is it choreographed? Is it actual fighting? Because the capoeira fighters I've seen have some of the most amazing movement ever, whether they're grapplers or strikers, and they seem to cross over really well to MMA, jiu-jitsu, submission grappling, whatever, just with their base. So, like, can you explain how the sport of capoeira works?
Yeah, so capoeira, for people who don't know, is like it's a martial art created by like the African slaves in Brazil. So when they brought all the slaves over to Brazil, like Africa is like right next to Brazil, right? So they had a way bigger influx of slaves than America did. Slavery actually started there before America and it ended well after. So it had a lot of African just a lot of African people there, and so they created that martial art out of like a way to be able to defend themselves, but they had to disguise it because obviously the slave masters, if they saw a bunch of slaves organizing to like doing some kickboxing or some
Training.
martial art, yeah, training in general, they would break that stuff up and beat the crap out of them, right? So
Yeah.
they had to like disguise it in a way where it looked like they were just getting together for a drum circle and dancing
That's
and
super
just
fascinating.
yeah, so that's kind of how the art came to be, and so they had to disguise all their movements to look like it was a dance, but they were training for self-defense, and that's the same thing it is nowadays too. So when people see it on the streets, they don't know if it's a choreographed dance or what it is, but there's no choreography to it. There's different styles though. There's different styles based on the rhythm of the instruments. So sometimes instruments are going slow, and that means that they're not so much as like trying to take each other's head off, but they're trying to like be more finesse about everything,
So there's
and
music that goes along to it. There's a
yeah, it
music
doesn't
piece.
happen without music, like I said, because they had to disguise it as a dance, right? So they had to
Wow.
make it look like they were dancing to the music. So there is no capoeira without music. You can't have one without the other, really. And then, yeah,
Is,
so based
is
on
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, what you can ask the question.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, will you see some capoeira competitions that are kind of like you said, like a dance, where it's like nobody gets hurt and it's kind of like a set. I don't know if choreographed is the word, but like the movements are still amazing and there's no one's getting hurt. And then is there also other capoeira competitions where it's like, no, we're full on like trying to knock each other out?
No, as far as competitions, none of it's choreographed. If you're talking about a performance, like let's say my family does performances all around Canada. Like we go to elementary schools, high schools to show the art to the kids in different communities, like everywhere, all throughout Canada, up north, all the way out east. Like we've traveled all of Canada showing our martial art. So when we're doing performances, we're definitely not hitting each other or trying to take each other's head off or doing
Right.
anything that would, look violent to the kids. But as far as actual competition, when there's like trophies involved and all that, you're seeing people like get knocked out cold, people break their legs and stuff. Like you've seen it all in capoeira. So as far as actual capoeira competition, it's no holds bar really. Like you'll see like some really
Really?
malicious stuff sometimes where people will go up, pretend like they're gonna shake your hand and front kick you in the face or something.
Oh,
Like it's
what?
yeah, it's no holds bar, and you'll see like if some specific competitions are like they're just like full on fights like without gloves too. So it's really dangerous, man. You really got to know what you're doing. But
And there's a grappling piece to that. Like you could take it to the ground, you
there
can
is. You
submit
can
them.
take it down. Like if you watch my first Instagram video I ever posted on Instagram, it's of me doing a competition for like a world tournament in Brazil. And if you watch that, you'll see like the game starts out. I do like a full out like 360 flip. And then I start playing with the dude, start like spinning on my hands, doing cool things to kind of like, set the tone of the game. Like, okay, we're just playing. And then all of a sudden I'll go in for a takedown, or all of a sudden I'm going in for a flying knee. It's like it's very like it gives you it it helps with like being able to set someone up, like being very malicious, and you know what I mean, very like finesse about how you set someone up. So
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it kind of like it translates well for fighting, because that's kind of how I did even with my fight. Like I threw a bunch of kicks to the guy's stomach, and eventually I kicked him in the head because I knew that he thought I was gonna go down, so I went up. And that's all natural stuff from capoeira, knowing that you gotta be able to finesse the
Right.
opponent in front of you, because you can't just land. And in capoeira, guys are so aware, and it gives you great reflexes of to see
Yeah.
kicks, to see things coming. Right, you're always like trying to think a few steps ahead. So that it gives me a great like yeah, ability to be able to set someone up, like think two steps ahead when it comes to striking type thing.
Yeah, any capoeira fighter I've ever seen has incredible movement, distance management, angles, footwork. Like it's crazy to watch. Are you like done competing in capoeira now? It's not really something you want to do. You want to do MMA full time now. There's no point in doing capoeira because of your career path and where it's going.
Right now, I would say just because of where I'm at in my career for MMA, I probably wouldn't take the risk of going, because, like I said, you have a chance of actually getting hurt. And
Yeah,
it's not a game. If you're competing like at a competition level, you have a chance of getting hurt. So right now, where I am in my career, I want to see like as far I want to see how far I can take it. So
yeah,
maybe until then, or maybe when I'm more established in my place at like you know maybe one of the higher promotions, then I don't have to worry as much. But right now at this level, like I have to be ready to fight anybody like at any
of
time.
course.
So definitely taking a backseat on that. And yeah, it's been quite a few years since I've been like fully committed into capoeira. But I mean, when you do something as a kid for that long, you never forget it. It's like, are you going to forget how to ride a bike? Are you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
W- If you were gonna do capoeira, like, would you have to go to Brazil to do those competitions, or are they in the States? I don't think we have any local capoeira here.
yeah, it's getting more international now. Before it was like all the big competitions would be in the States, but now they have them in Europe and North America and Mexico, Brazil.
Hmm.
Definitely, like the Brazil is like still the hub of capoeira, right? So you have the best people in the world. They all come from Brazil, and it's definitely the most like competitive feel. Sometimes when capoeira gets further away from Brazil, it feels more like, you know, for training and stuff like that. But when you're in Brazil, it's like you're watching your back type thing. Like you're like it's a different environment there, right? You're playing and you're like you watch everything. You never know what's gonna happen. You're very different environment. But yeah, for sure Brazil is definitely still the hub of like the best capoeiristas in the world with the most competitive competitions.
How is the sport scored? Like, is there rounds? Is there 10 rounds? Is there 3 rounds? Or how long are the rounds? It, is it just until someone
It's
gets
usually
knocked
like a
out?
60, or it's like a 90-second or 60-second game. And there's like three judges, and they basically judge on like who has a better style. So when you're throwing your movements, are your hands like sharp, and or are you like completely loose and all over the place with no real technique? Who's actually scoring with their movements? Like, am I able to trick you to land like a kick, or am I able to hit you with a sweep and you end up on your butt, or am I able to make you look bad by doing, you know, like hopping over you or doing something else? So they'll judge based on like movements. Is this guy able to do like a fucking 360 flip into a head spin and have style and still be able to be effective in the circle? Or is he just a flipper who can't be really effective when it comes to actually like
Hmm.
challenging their opponent? So it's a lot that goes into it, and usually the people who judge it are people that have been doing it for like 30 years. There, you know what I mean? With capoeira, it's like one of those sports where to be a master, like, you know, in Taekwondo or whatever, you can be a black belt in like God knows how many years, like 5, 10. In capoeira, you'll be doing it for 40 years and you might not even reach the highest belt, like at all.
Hmm.
You might never. You might die before that happens. Like it's completely a lifelong sport, because it doesn't just matter about how good you flip or how fast you kick. It's about, do you know the history of capoeira? Do you know how to play instruments? Do you know how to teach? Do you know how
You
to
need to know how to
sing?
play instruments to get ranked in capoeira.
Oh yeah, you'll never see a belt in your life if you don't know how to play the main instrument. He's
What is the main instrument?
it's a beating bow. So I don't know if you've seen it. It's the one that kind of looks like a bow and arrow. I'm sure the one with the bow and arrow. It looks like a bow and arrow, and it has like a gourd at the at the bottom here, and they play it with the stick.
Can you play it?
Yeah, I can play it. I don't. Have you ever seen it, or
I don't
does
know.
anything come
It
to
sounds
mind?
like you're describing like a harp.
It kind of is. It's like a very like it controls the like how fast the game is played. So that it controls like if it's like a really fast tempo, it controls if everyone's gonna be playing fast and aggressive. If it's a slow one, it controls the different game. Is called like Angola is the slowest game, and then Hejo now is the fastest game, and then you got the game in between. It's called Benguela, and that's all controlled based on how the person is playing the main instrument, which is the beating bow. So yeah, you have to know. It's like I'm saying, it's a complete martial art. So if it kind of gets you ready for MMA, because if you want to be a good MMA guy, you have to know a bunch of things, right? If you want to be a good capoeirista, you have to know a bunch of things. It's not just kicking fast, flipping really good, being able to sweep someone or do a bunch of crazy stuff. Like you have to know how to play all these instruments in all their tones. You have to know a bunch of history, a bunch of history. You have to know. You have to have years of teaching experience. It's just the list is endless, man. And
It's
like I'm
crazy.
saying, if you think you're gonna join capoeira to be, I want to be a capoeira master, you literally you'll never see that. Like it's so it take like my cousin Lalu, he's been doing it since he was a baby like me, like probably like 5 years old, and he's in his like late 30s now, and he just got his like master first level of master belt. There's like other levels of like getting stripes, you know what I mean? There's certain levels of master, and he just finally got his first level of master after like 35 years of doing it. So
Is it like
it's,
colored belts like jujitsu?
yeah, they're colored. They're
How
colored
does it
belts. Yeah.
go? How do the belts go?
See, every like group has different ones because there's so many. There's so many belts, but I'll tell you the highest belt is like red, and that's a master belt. And then there's even a higher level master belt. It's like red and white. And then like the grand master belt is just white. It's just white. Your first belt when you start, it's called Krua, which means just plain. Like there's just no color. It's not white. It's just plain. Like they don't even dye it. It's just
What is it
whatever
like
color.
a beige sort of color, like an
It's
unbleached?
like grayish beige, but it's not dyed. It's just whatever the rope color is. It's like kind of like yeah, it's plain. They call it just plain belt. And then you got all your kids' belts, and then you got your first adult belts, and then there's so many of those. Like there's a lot of belts. So
Is there
it's
a
yeah,
black
it's a
belt?
no. There's no black colored belt,
Interesting.
unfortunately.
That's funny that the white belt is the final stage. Yeah, fascinating.
I guess it's like kind of like I don't know. I guess it's like pure, right? White. It's like a pure belt. So
Mhm. You
whatever
had
they're thinking
mentioned
there.
that it's essentially sorry, I don't mean to turn this into the capoeira show. It's just super interesting for me because I'm like
Yeah.
I said, totally ignorant about it. Um you had mentioned that it's essentially like no holds barred fighting. So but I assume you're not allowed shit like eye pokes, biting. Like, are you allowed groin strikes? Are you allowed hair pulling? Are you allowed leg
Um.
locks? Are you
I
allowed
mean, if
soccer
you
kicks?
yeah, like you see guys going for like scissor sweeps and crazy stuff like that, and like sometimes women end up slightly pulling each other's hairs. But the thing I mean about no holds barred, you still have to be you if you get out of yourself, like you look like you just got mad and you wanted to hit someone back because they did something to you, you're gonna lose that match because you lost your cool, you lost your finesse, you lost your style, right?
So that's part
It's
of the
hard.
scoring.
Yeah, yeah, you can't. You're. It's hard to keep It's hard to look stylish when you're trying to take someone's head off and literally get mad and try to like no holds bar them. They're gonna stop it and be like, whoa, whoa, like relax, like what are you doing? This is, you know what I mean? Like fucking get it together. But you're allowed to knock someone out. You're allowed to sweep someone. You're allowed to open palm slap them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's literally no holds bar. Like you're allowed to knee someone in the head if their head is in the right position and it's kind of like it's at you timed it properly type thing. If
Can
you're
you
just
stomp
doing
them on
it,
the ground?
um, you wouldn't do that, but you see guys like literally like if they sweep someone and they get on the ground, you'll sometimes see a guy like jump up in the air like they're about to stomp him on the head just to show that they could have, and then they'll like last second not do it. Like that kind of stuff, you know what I mean?
Crazy. I kind of want to watch it now.
You
Do you
should
follow
definitely, you'll
it?
be entertained.
You watch it?
For sure, always, yeah, always. My cousins are competing and stuff. My cousin actually there's like this big like international competition one. It's called VMB, and my cousin just competed in it in February. It kind of literally they'll like look for the best in the world and be like, "You're the best in the world. Okay, we're gonna look for another guy who's the best in the world, and we're gonna get you guys to compete against each other." And the way they do it is like they have different rounds. Like one round is going to be like a solo round where you just go in, show all the crazy moves you can do within like 30 seconds. And then next round will be like, okay, you guys are going to play with each other in the slow tempo. And then the next game you play with each other in the medium tempo. And then the last game you play with each other in the fastest tempo. And then they get judged each round individually. And then whoever has the most points at the end is like the better. So it's like, it's a very like, it's kind of like MMA. It's like different styles, different things that they have to be good at too. They even have a round where the guy's like singing, like they'll be like he'll be like
Crazy.
you sing something, yeah. So yeah, it's a like that's the reason why it's like I can't be fully enveloped in that trying to do MMA because it's
It's too
too
much.
it's too expansive. It is, yeah.
Do you still train capoeira? Like, do you still? 'Cause I've gone to a couple Cobrinha seminars, and like every seminar, he begins with capoeira movements. You know, the one where it's like this, and you're like moving
Yeah, yeah,
back
yeah.
and forth, and then like
Yeah,
like
it's called the Jinga. They call it
like
Jinga.
like handstand type movements and things like
Yeah.
this, just like really graceful movements. Like, do you still do that just to keep yourself sharp, or is your training mostly like MMA specific now?
All my training is MMA specific, but I warm up with all that stuff still, like every day. Like if you even see my warm ups in the back of like Battlefield, I'm like doing like cartwheels and head springs and like just a bunch of stuff to keep myself super agile. And actually, it helped for wrestling. Like when I transitioned to wrestling, I had success instantly. That's the one thing about capoeira I'd say as well. If you do capoeira, I feel like it gives you a chance to do anything else you want with your body. Like if I want, maybe I could be a singer, I could be an actor, I could be a wrestler, a jiu-jitsu, a kickboxer. It gives you that base to have so many different avenues of where you want to take it after that. So I say it's the best base if you want to raise your kids to do anything with their bodies. Like if you want to go do movies, if you want to go do stunts, if you want to do jujitsu, MMA, like you just have such body awareness and control and fluidity and all that stuff that you can go do anything involving your body and do well, like very well.
Very cool. How do you feel about sport specific movements compared to like uh conventional lifts in the gym? So like, doing like doing like the conventional lifts or like plyometrics or Olympic style lifts as opposed to you doing capoeira or a judo fighter doing like repetitions where they're pulling bands. Like, do you think there's a place for everything? Do you think one is more important than the other? Because there seems to be this shift, at least from what I can see on social media, where guys are like, forget all the sport specific shit. That's not going to help you get better at your sport. What's going to help you get better at the sport is doing these conventional lifting exercises and plyometrics and things like that. How do you feel about that?
Yes, me personally, I honestly always didn't like the gym. Like I never liked hitting the gym and doing stuff like that. Like I would get my strength or whatever from, just training, and sometimes, after class I'd be like do like 50 pull-ups or like, wrestling things, right? 50 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, all that stuff. And I never worked out really until maybe I was like 18 years old, and that was just because I was tired of looking skinny all the time, and I wanted to get into like film, and I'm like, man, I have pencil neck, I should lift some weights. So for me, like I never felt like I needed to work out as far as like for extra strength. Like I always felt like super strong for like my frame and all that, but now I feel like it's really like now that I've been doing it for MMA and stuff like that, I feel like it really helps in negating injuries type thing. Like I'm not I'm not going into the gym to try to like okay, let's say I have a lift that looks like something I would in some way I would lift someone in the on the mats. Like I don't do that thinking like, yeah, so if I lift this exactly the way I lift someone on the mats, then you know what I mean? I do it more to help my joints and just make things a little easier when I'm in there. Not it's just like a supplement, you know, when you're taking supplements to make your body a little better. I that's how I think of like working out now specifically. It's just like a extra supplement for my body. So it's like I'm not injuring myself as much. I have longevity in my joints, and sometimes I do feel like when I work out like for strength and stuff like that, like when I go to like grab someone or do a certain thing, it feels like it was just a little bit easier because of like the heavy lifts or whatever. Just like even if it's just like a small fraction, everything counts, right? Like
Hmm.
in a game of inches, like you know what I mean, having like a few centimeters, it helps. So I've definitely seen benefits. And personally, in my fight camps, I don't do too much lifting until like the last bit, like last maybe 4 weeks, because I start to tone it down on my hard like sparring and training and all that. And then instead of doing that, I'll add like a lift in with like I'll get a personal trainer, because I personally don't like to add the extra stress of like thinking of routines. But I do research all that stuff, so I make sure that I know like when I go with a trainer, I see what he's doing, and I'm like, okay, this was the stuff that I was looking into, and the stuff that I thought would even be good for myself. And so I know that when I get someone, that I feel confident in what they're doing. But like I said, yeah, I just wait till like the last bit of my camp, maybe the last month and a half, where I start uh more the last month, where I start teetering down from like the hard sparring and stuff like that, and more, and so then I can add that to keep me going throughout the camp. Like man, it's been like what, God knows how many fight camps I've had where I ended up not fighting or whatever, and you still go through the camp, like your body still goes through it, right? So I've had so many camps now, and like I feel like I got it down to a science. Like my last camp, I started my weight at like 182, and in like 5 weeks I was able to get down so easily to 145. Like it's like a breeze, like for me, like to get to 145, it's like the perfect weight class for me. And you know, I'm able to get those 5 weeks and peak properly. Like I feel like an 8 week camp now is just like it's so hard to maintain a peak conditioning for like three weeks when you're like getting ready for a fight. So I like to get my peak conditioning for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and then I go in like in good health. You know what I mean? There's times where my first title fight, I trained so hard for so long, and then I remember walking into the venue literally limping because I had such bad shin splints from overtraining that I was like limping into the venue, and then had to get taped up in the back, had to get physio work done the day of the fight. Like it was bad. So it's like you just through experience you learn like how to properly peak in like a good amount of time, and not having to worry about, like I said, from my first experience of like going, I don't need to fucking train for anyone, to that, to then after having my first title fight and like overtraining completely. And now I know like how to properly, like I'm in the middle where it's like I train hard, and I know when I feel peaked, when I can do like however many rounds, like 6 5 minute rounds of like MMA circuit training, kind of like where you know someone will hold pads for you for a minute, another guy tries to take you down for a minute, you're trying to get up off your back for the next minute, you're wall wrestling the next minute, then you're back to the pads for the next minute. Like that'll push your cardio if you can do stuff like that for 5 minutes for 5 6 7 rounds, then you know like you're ready to fight. That usually in a fight there's a lot of like lulls in between, right? It's not always like go go go. So to be able to do that for like 6 7 rounds, you'll know when you're in top shape. And like that, I've been able to get into those in that kind of shape in like 5 6 weeks time. So it's good. It makes you feel like you can take a short notice fight too. Like it just helps a lot more, instead of having to worry to be like, no, I need 8 weeks to get ready for a camp, I need eight
Hmm.
weeks and then stressing out if you don't have 8 weeks, overtraining, and then you know coming in at half the, yeah, half health, and affecting your performance.
Awesome. And, what is your, as a fighter, what's your greatest attribute?
For me personally, man, I honestly, it's hard to say. I'd probably have to say my movement, just I'm guessing because like I don't know. I've had a lot of training partners that like I've been with for years and years, and like even they tell me like it's still hard to figure me out.
I kind of thought you might say movement because just watching your fights, like your movement's fucking sick. How does a fighter improve their movement? Like, is it drilling? Is it just like, I assume your capoeira background is where you get your movement from, but
100%,
like,
yeah.
what could an MMA fighter do to improve their movements?
I find skipping is like one of my favorite things to do. Like a lot of fighters that don't box, I feel like, or don't do striking sport specifically. I don't know, maybe a lot of guys just don't skip nowadays. Like I don't see it that much, but obviously people do. It's just lately I barely see anyone skip. I'm like, do you skip ever? I ask people, but I love skipping. It really like, great cardio, sets you can get great rhythm, but as far as actual movement, like in front of someone, though, I feel like you have to almost develop your own patterns. Sometimes it's like people will look at patterns online and it's like patterns that everyone's used to seeing. Like even though it's like it is movement, but as far as like actually being effective, like yeah, like look at like Dominic Cruz, like his movement is world renowned for being effective in MMA. He didn't, you know, follow someone's plan. He just
Mm-hmm.
develop his own patterns. And that's kind of what I did like when I was a kid. Like before I ever watched Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, any of that stuff, you would see me in the gym doing like completely crazy angles and stuff like that. And it was nothing that like someone taught me. It was just from capoeira, I guess. But even then, like it's still very different because I train with my cousins. I've seen how they fight. Like none of them move the way I do, and it just felt like the right thing to do. I guess like I don't know. I feel
Mm-hmm.
it could be from coming from a place of like being the smaller guy already and not wanting to be tracked down and hit. So you would just like completely cut weird angles and all that stuff, and it's just for me, it's always developed, and it's just one of those things where it's like sometimes I'll see someone in front of me, like a karate guy, someone who has like unorthodox movement and all of that stuff, and even for them to see like my style, like you could just see it in their face when I start moving that they're like, oh wait, what the heck's going on here? You know what I mean? So that's also a thing that gives me super great confidence when I'm fighting someone. It's like man, I can't imagine what it'd be like trying to figure me out, never have gone with me, and having only like 5 or 15, 20 minutes to try to figure it out is a hard task when I've been going with pro guys for years and years and they still have to redial in every time we go and be like, okay, I gotta re-figure this guy out. So yeah, man, definitely movement is probably one of my favorite attributes that I have. And then obviously after that is like kicking and stuff like that. And I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like a battle between kicking and grappling for me because, like, just like the success and the great things grappling has brought for me as, like I said, being the smallest guy, youngest guy in the family for the males. Before my cousins, everyone had kids. Yeah, grappling's brought me so much success. Like just being a smaller guy in the family and all that. And it's hard to like. I just when people ask me like, what kind of style do you have? I always say grappler because, when shit hits the fan, I know I'm going to rely on my grappling because it's always gotten me out of bad situations. And I have a type of grappling where it's like, I don't care if I'm in a bad position now or if you're good now, like you're real strong now, I'm like I'd rather play the long game. It's like I want to see how you feel after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you know what I mean? Like I have a style grappling where it's like I prefer it to go longer and longer because I like to like take the will out of people. Like I like feeling them like be a little bit weaker than they were a few minutes ago, and that's kind of what gives me more strength and builds my grappling up. Like I don't I used to be more like very jujitsu-y after obviously doing a bunch of wrestling. Is more like, concentric holding and all that stuff. But at the same time, for me, I like giving the space to let people feel like they can work and kind of drain themselves. Like if I'm on top of someone, well, specifically for MMA, I don't like being on my back. There's like very little you can do off your back from MMA that's like effective against a high level guy. Like when two high level jiu-jitsu
Mm-hmm.
guys are going, it's going to be hard to get him when he knows what to look out for, right? And then you have the risk of getting
Yeah.
punched and all that stuff. So for MMA specifically, man, I really don't like being on my back. It just doesn't look good for the judges. Every minute, every second that goes by, you're losing in someone's eyes, right? So
True.
if I'm on top and I'm winning just by being on top, why not let the guy work himself into a little bit of a, fatigue position? Like let him figure it out. Like I don't got to do nothing.
Yeah.
And then if he in the process of trying to get up or trying to make something happen makes a mistake and then give something up to me, even better. And I
Yeah.
I did all that by just being patient and just letting him give it up. So you're winning.
Hmm.
You're winning if you're just on top, and then you're going to be winning if the guy makes a mistake. So why not do that, right? And that's kind of how like my
Makes
yeah,
sense.
that's how my grappling like I guess philosophy is for MMA. I know a lot of times like I'll hear my coach is like hit him and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I will, but as soon as I do, a guy's fresh. As soon as you posture up to hit a guy, he's gonna use all his energy to get up, and you gave him the space to get up halfway. So
Right.
it's like, why not let? It's kind of like having someone who has a bunch of punching power, and then you want to grapple them to put blood in their arms. Kind of the same way for someone who wants to get up really aggressively. You let them tire out some of those muscles and mechanics, and then when they try it like the fifth time, it's a little bit less explosive, and then then they're giving something up, and they're moving to the next position. I love doing a knee on belly, those kind of rough positions, just to like, man, it's the worst when you're someone's trying to get up and you're squeezing the crap out of their guts, and then I'm kind of mean with it. Like I'll sometimes like I'll feel their breath, like I'll feel them breathing, and as soon as they like breathe out, I'll like push in, like you know what I mean, just doing like little mean little things to like people don't see it, but it's like I know what I'm doing in there. Like
Hmm.
I'm thinking about like the long game, especially when it's like a title fight, like 25 minutes, especially. So.
Man, sounds very, very strategic and intelligent. You had mentioned skipping. That's funny you say that because I just started skipping. Like, I mean, as a kid, I did a bit of skipping, but like, we're talking when I was tiny, and now I'm actually like, I'm like, okay, I want to become competent in skipping, and holy fuck, it's hard, dude. I've only been doing it for like a month. Like, it's exhausting. It's crazy. You skip for a minute, when you have no previous skipping background, and it's just like super fucking hard. Like, when you skip, how long do you skip
Yeah, I was
for?
about to ask you, like, how long are the rounds like that you've been doing, like, for skipping?
Well, usually I'll do like kind of like every minute on the minute type circuits, and skipping is usually one of the stations. So I'll skip for like 45 seconds to a minute. So I'm fucking super novice at it. Like I'm just trying to get a good rhythm, honestly. I don't have any like tricks or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
You sound like you're pretty seasoned. Like how long can you skip for,
For
without
for
fatigue?
warm up, like before I like we'll do shadow. Like I like to use it as like a warm up before I even do shadow boxing, which is just another warm up. Like I do like I'm warming up for like an hour, but for skipping, I'll do 15 minutes straight without stopping for just warm up, and then if I'm using it for like a burnout or like an actual workout, I'll do that as long as my fight. So I'll do 25 minutes. When I'm in fight camp, I'll do 25 minutes without stopping. I'll just go straight for 25 minutes. And like this is skipping, like 10 minutes of skipping is like the equivalent of like 30 to 45 minutes of running as far as calories burned and stuff like that. So I'd rather skip for 10 minutes than run for 30. That shit's so boring. Like, like just running on a
Yeah.
treadmill for 30 minutes, like you're just like, you just start thinking. And I do it too, obviously, but I'd much rather skip. And like it gives you such good confidence when I skip for 25 minutes straight because I know I can do it for my whole fight if I want to. Like if I want to, I could just,
Yeah.
dance around on the outside for 25 whole minutes and not get tired. So it's another
Would
confidence builder, but
would you say skipping is like your cardio of choice aside from training in martial arts? Like what kind
cardio
of
of
cardio do you
choice.
do?
I honestly love swimming, dude. I love
Me too.
swimming, yeah.
Yeah, swimming's
It's
awesome.
swimming so freaking hard, especially like yeah, when you're swimming for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're just like man, you feel so good after, because if you have the proper breathing, at first you feel like you're gonna drown, like if you don't have the proper technique. But when you have the proper
Yeah.
technique, you feel just like you're just gliding and you're just going, and it's so low impact, and you know that it helps you breathe like as well in like stressful situations,
Yeah.
because when you're going at a good pace and you're actually tired, even with good technique, you still feel like, holy shit, it's hard to get air right now. But and then you're in water, so it's like it's one of those crazy things where it's like you gotta keep going. You don't want to drown. You know what I mean? So
It's
I
true.
love swimming, and then after swimming, I love doing sauna as well. Like anything to push my mind that's not super high impact. Like sometimes I feel like running on treadmill is kind of rough on the knees, or you know what I mean. But I
Same.
love swimming. I love going to the sauna for long periods of time. Skipping is definitely like those are like my top three for like cardio, definitely. And then I just like grappling for like 45-minute rounds, like one round 45 minutes nonstop. Like I don't like doing the breaks in between, because it feels like I don't need to. Like you just feel better the longer you go, like personally. Like I've always been,
Mhm.
I did lots of cross country and stuff like that, like growing up, track and field, all that. So I always like just the long distance game. And it's weird because people assume that because I'm explosive and like do capoeira stuff, that it's like, oh, he's gonna gas, or he has that explosive style, so he's gonna gas. But it's like I know myself, and I know like I feel more comfortable the longer I do an activity. Like I feel it's easier to do.
Mhm. Um, who is your inspiration? Like, where do you find inspiration to, add things to your toolbox, or just to get inspired about martial arts and competing in MMA?
Like my inspiration, right, especially for MMA, were like those guys that I called out, like Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson, John Jones, the guys that set those records. That is like it's gonna be so hard to beat in the modern day MMA. Like it's gonna be very hard to beat those records they set, man. Jose Aldo, like all those guys that kind of were ahead of the pack, and it just gives me the motivation to want to be ahead of ahead of my peers. I don't want to be like, neck and neck with everyone. I want to show that it's like there's a clear level difference when I go in there against people. And then also just, yeah, my family, having them work so hard to represent capoeira here in Canada, especially, and like never having any of us go to the UFC per se. Like that's always been like a dream of mine to get to the UFC because of my family, because of capoeira, and I want to show that our specific style of capoeira from our group can get it to the highest level. So that's what kind of started me on the journey. It's still a motivation for me, but after seeing like the level that I'm at right now, and I like having the belief that I know now that not only can I get there, but I feel like I can actually like do well there, because getting there is one thing, right?
Mhm.
And then after what, it's like, okay, I did it. And it's like, no, you have to have another goal. And like, I got that goal and that extra motivation once I started going with guys who had gone to that level and made it there. And then, going with them and seeing it's like, okay, I know that I'm at that level, and I can actually do even really well at that level. So that's definitely what keeps me going now, man. And just obviously having a daughter as well, right? That definitely motivates me, because like before you're just fighting for
For
like
sure.
kind of personal reasons, and now I feel like I'm fighting for something more than that. And as well as the city I'm from Brazil, like everyone obviously knows Brazil has a bunch of fighters, but there hasn't been that many dudes from my specific city. It's Recife. There hasn't been too many that made it to UFC at the highest level. The only guy I can think of is Rafael Assunção. He's from Recife as well. And yeah, man, just representing the Afro Brazilian culture, capoeira, my family, my daughter, just all those things. Like at the end of the day, it's a super selfish sport. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie and say that I'm thinking about it when I'm in the cage. It's not. That's not what I'm thinking about. But when things get hard and it's easy to quit, those are the like things that I can draw on that kind of make me push that extra bit. Because it's not finances, I'll tell you that. Finances with
Yeah.
fighting, it's like it's not. It's kind of like a something that it could happen, but if you're thinking like, oh, I'm getting into fighting because I want to be rich, like, dude, pick a different sport, man.
Yes, definitely. Who's your favorite fighter?
Right now, Current
I mean,
times.
it could be of all time.
Oh, of all time was definitely Anderson. It's hard to.
You know, he was just in Vancouver like this week. Did
Yeah,
you see
I
that?
know.
He did
I
a
couldn't go, man. I
gi
was
seminar,
working.
Bibbies.
I know. I was working,
Yeah,
man. It was so last minute. They had like they like the week before or something. I
I
saw a
know.
poster.
I know that would have been so fucking cool to go
Oh
see
shit,
that guy and train with him in the gi. Um, yeah, Anderson Silva's one of the goats for
Anderson.
sure. Okay, wrapping things up pretty quickly here. Like it's a jiu-jitsu show. You claim you're a grappler, right? You have amazing jiu-jitsu. Do you ever see yourself competing in jiu-jitsu, or is jiu-jitsu just a means to, progress your MMA career at this point?
I tried to get on the last battle mats, dude. The very last
Oh,
battle. Yeah,
really?
I tried, but then they're like,
The
no.
155?
Yeah, they're like, no, the event's too close to the fight and this and that. So I was like,
Yeah,
whatever.
fair.
Yeah, but no, definitely, man. I just I remember like I did compete in jujitsu when I was a kid, like early on, but I would go to the jujitsu competitions in my capoeira like attire because I was just like a capoeira kid who had been grappling with his family for years, and I'm just like, yeah, let's just do. They'd be like, yeah, go do the tournaments, and I would literally go in my capoeira pants and shirt and belt, and they're like, who the heck is this kid? So it's like,
Like you can't wear those.
yeah, it's like in the nogi, I would do that. So then yeah, I've always wanted to compete. I didn't do too much gi. Like every time I did it, it was fun. I liked it, but then I felt like nogi kind of just I just like nogi better because I feel like I don't like being held by my clothes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And
No, that's
it's
fair.
also a
I'm
lot
the same
harder
way.
to hold someone down when they don't have that. And I like I said, I like being a top player. So to have the actual challenge of holding someone who's so slippery and trying to get up is like it's a lot harder in no-gi. Like if in gi you can kind of just staple someone down by their clothes and like they have to slip out of their
You
gi
can.
to get up kind of thing, right? So I
Hmm.
definitely want to compete.
Yeah, I'd love to see you compete in jiu-jitsu. That'd be awesome. What rank are you out of curiosity? Not that it fucking matters
The
at all.
last time I got a belt, I think it was like 10, 12 years ago, and it was a blue belt, I believe. I think I was
So
18.
technically you're a blue belt.
Yeah, technically I might have that blue belt was so old it might go back to white. It's it's so faded
Oh, that's
probably. I don't
funny.
even know where it is. Like I haven't rocked it or anything, but yeah, technically I'm a blue belt, but hey, I've grappled a lot of dudes, but I've trained over at Bibby's for a bit. I remember grappling with Harrison a couple times and it's just
How's
all
that?
over around. Oh, that guy's a beast, man. Although
Dude,
granted, we had freaking. I think we were doing MMA at the time, like MMA rounds. So he kept going for leg locks, and I had like my shin guards on, so I would like slip out, and I'm like, I have to get out of my own shin guards to even get out of here. But yeah, no, it's
yeah.
just like I've grappled with like so many dudes like throughout the time, and we've never grappled, so it's really weird. But I was gonna ask, so did you start doing jujitsu around that time when you were at West Coast and my dad came in, or how long were you doing jujitsu before that
I
situation
think
happened?
I'm pretty sure I was like a white or blue belt, and this is before anyone was really doing leg locks. Like 10th Planet was probably one of the first gyms in Vancouver that actually had like some kind of leg locks. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Before there was this explosion where now everyone does leg locks. I started, what year would it have been? Anyways, I was like 19 or 20 when I started. I'm 36 now, so 16 years ago is when
Wow.
I started jujitsu. And I didn't really have much previous martial arts experience. I did a little bit of wrestling in middle school, and then I stopped and I started playing hockey instead. And then after high school, I was like, okay, I want to try jujitsu, and like instantly I was hooked. I was like, fuck, I wish I'd been doing this for the last like 10 years because it was so awesome. But it just really wasn't even that popular back then. You know what I mean? It was just hard to find. And I know that's kind of the cliche where old dudes are like, I wish I started younger, but like another side of that coin is I'm just fortunate that I'm like, I'm 36. I'm not the youngest guy, but I'm still young enough to still be in the sport and be a part of it, and it's like you know how awesome it is,
Dude,
all the good
36,
things
and
that go along with
you're
martial arts.
just like in your prime. Like Like I feel
Yeah,
like
maybe. Fuck. Doesn't feel like it some days.
yeah, no, it could feel like that, but I personally, I feel like I feel like men kind of reach their prime from their like 30 to 35, 36 type thing. And then, depending on how you treated your body when you were coming up, then you'll see how much you
Sure.
last. But yeah, usually guys like you don't see UFC champions much younger than like 30 something nowadays. Like guys are
Yeah.
literally reaching their peak in their like mid 30s, it's like 32, 31, and then they'll reign for like a few years until after 35, 36, and then some of them do good, some of them don't. But definitely, if you're looking at like, there's only been
Mhm.
really one or like a few really young champions in their 20s. Like, it's a hard sport, and you learn a
Yes.
lot in those times, right? So it's very, very rare to see young champions. Usually it's like in their 30s, early 30s to mid 30s is when you're in your prime of like your power, your joint strength, your tendon strength, all that stuff. Maybe not testosterone. I don't know. I don't know how the testosterone, if the levels at what age, but I know as far as strength, like I've never felt stronger. I've never felt better cardio now. So it's like, it's time to make it happen now. You know what I mean? I was been lucky to have four fights in the last 12 months, and lucky I've come out unscathed each time. So I just want to stay as active as possible at this age, and I hopefully want to retire by the time I'm like 37 from fighting. You know what I mean? So I got another 8 years, and I've already been doing it for how long now? Like 12. So yeah, but martial arts, I'll never stop doing martial arts, man. Since the earliest memory I can remember till hopefully the very last memory I have in life, it will be about martial arts.
That's so awesome. Honestly, it's been a great conversation, man. Before we go, I just want to ask you, like, what's next for you? Are you, if Dana White calls you tomorrow, are you going to the UFC, or do you want to defend your title a couple more times first and get more experience?
Oh
Can you
man,
speak on it? Like,
at
what's
this
on your
point, as
mind?
far as defending title, like, no, it's not really exciting anymore. Like I've only had 7 professional fights, but four of them I've won titles for, like here, you know what I mean? So it's like already 4-time champion. Like what I need, five, six. Like how many more do I need? It doesn't. It's not as much of a challenge now. That's why every time when I fight, even my last fight, I wasn't even thinking about the belt. I was just thinking about the challenge in front of me. That's what really gets me excited. It's not like fighting for belts anymore. It's just like the next challenge, the next guy. That's what really like gets me super hyped to train, and it feels like yeah, that's the only thing that I'm really thinking about is the next challenge. So if I can find the next best challenge, that's what's keeping me going. I'm not so rigid on the UFC stuff. Like I know that like I just wake up in the morning and I just say I want to display my skills at the highest level possible. And if, that happens to be in the UFC, like that's a result of that. Like I'm not thinking, I really want to be in the UFC. That would be awesome. That would be a dream. But, life has a funny way of being like when you really want something, sometimes it doesn't know how to differentiate. It's like, so about giving it to him or not, right? Sometimes you really chase something and it just feels like it's going further and further away. So it's like I only really want things that are in my immediate control. Like I want to get better in my skills. I want to perform my skills at the highest level. Those things are all in my immediate control, and that's stuff I can immediately pick up the phone, call someone, and make something happen for myself, right? As far as being in the UFC, I don't control that. You have people who decide, it's their company and they make decisions. And if they see that I'm at the level and one of the best fighters in the world and they want one of the best fighters in the world, then it'll happen, right? So that's kind of how I look at it as far as my career and stuff like that. I'm happy to be making memories with like some of my best friends and for my friends and family and all that stuff like that. So I'm good with that. But on a reality note, yes, I am talking to my team is talking to like some matchmakers in the UFC, and they haven't said no. So that's always a good thing. Usually they're pretty like straightforward, like no, he needs more fights, or no, we want him to do this and that. So I didn't get a hard no
Mhm.
yet. If they're kind of still trying to figure out what they want to do with me, if they want to wait for next season of contenders or whatever it be, right? Or if they can specifically get me a fight that's kind of like a contender series type fight outside the UFC and then go straight in. Whatever it may be, that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. But like I said, I'm not waking up every day going like, have they called yet? Have they called? I'm literally just living the journey, man. And it's like the best thing I could ever ask for, to be a pro athlete and 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 grow every day and do it with like guys that I consider like some of my best friends. And like, yeah, man, I'm just so blessed in that sense. And like, yeah, I'm just happy to be able to do that, and I'm looking to perform my skills at the highest level. That's really what I want to do.
Incredible. Is there anyone on your radar? Like, even it doesn't even have to be in the UFC, but like locally, is there anyone that like you're like, man, like I would love to fight that guy? Or are you just like, no, I'm not even thinking about it right now. I'm
I've
just gonna
actually
play
never,
whatever is.
I've actually never called anyone out, but just recently I was watching a Cage Warriors fight, and there was this kid in the main event. His name's like Luke Riley, and he had got called to do the Contender Series, and he had like some visa issues, and then he fought this weekend, and he won by knockout. So he's 10-0 now. And for me, man, like I said, what excites me the most is not belts or anything like that. It's just a challenge. And I actually went on Instagram and commented on the post. It's so I feel so cringy even doing it, because I've
Did you
never.
call him out?
I just tag the people. I'm like, this would be a great fight. Like, it'd be kind of like a Contender Series fight outside of the UFC. And I think like if whoever wins should probably just go straight to the UFC. And I put it out there, and I did that before, so that was new. So yeah, man, like I said, just challenges. I like undefeated guys. I like guys who look like they're just beasts and unbeatable. Like, I've never fought anybody that I thought was an easy fight ever, and I don't think it's always been hard for me to get those fights, because like guys usually know my background in some way, shape, or form, especially locally. So I'm just looking for the next challenge, man. Whoever's looking unbeatable, whoever's looking like they're at that level and is willing to fight me, that's what I'm kind of looking at right now.
Very nice, Radley de Silva. Well, there you have it. And yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out some of Radley's highlights, definitely do it. Guys got beautiful grappling and striking, and definitely check out his last win, the highlight reel, wheel kick, just unbelievable stuff. One of the best knockouts you're ever going to see. One of the most beautiful finishes I've ever seen. I want to take this time to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And we definitely got to train at some point, make it happen. And is there anything you want to say before you go? Anything you want to talk about, or talk about social media, whatever you got to push? Go ahead.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't had a chance to follow me, my Instagram handle is Radley_de Silva. Trying to build that Instagram up, because I know it's like part of the game now. You gotta sell yourself. Really, it's a spectator sport, right? And if nobody knows you're alive, then how is the company gonna find any reason to want to bring you along or even pay you at that on that note, right? So yeah, trying to build the following up. So if you could follow me, Radley_de Silva at Instagram. I just want to thank my sponsors, the people behind me, Strike Recovery, the guys doing physio on me for the last like 5 years, keeping me together. Pinnacle MMA, Ashek Capoeira Vancouver, Fairfax Partners. These guys have been sponsoring me for my last few fights. You make no money locally, so it's been such a big help having them and being able to get in there and fight because of those guys. And just want to give them a shout out. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. I can't wait to go train with you, dude. Like, I mean, we'll talk after, but yeah, I definitely will be there training with you. Hopefully
We're gonna
really
make it
soon,
happen
yes.
for sure. Even if it's just you and me, it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be a class. I'm like, dude, I got to make time to train with this guy. It's just unreal. Yeah, and you know what? You're in a sport where it's not just if you win, it's how you win, right? And not even just how you win. Can you get people interested in you? Can you market yourself? Can you get people to like follow you and want to see you fight? Like, these are all factors that play into your profession. Whereas in like jiu-jitsu, that does kind of exist, I guess, but a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are just happy to like get an advantage and win the match on an advantage, right? And it's like you got to go out there, and every time you go out there, you got to show something spectacular. You got to like win the crowd. And I think just by speaking with you and the way that you approach your own growth and the sport, and just like the way that you even talk about your future and what is in your control and whatever, you're very, very wise, especially for someone who's not even that old. And man, you're gonna have an awesome career. I can't wait to see how it goes. So thank you so much for coming on, Radley. It's
Fuck
been a
yeah,
pleasure.
man. Thanks for having me, bro.
Sweet. Guys, if you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. Really, really appreciate it. Leave a comment or a review, like, share, subscribe, wherever you can. Thank you so much for joining me, Radley. Thank you so much. Remember, the Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. See you later.